You're listening to Quantum Conversations with Karen Curry Parker. Join us as we explore new frontiers in consciousness, science, and evolution. And now here's your host, Karen Curry Parker.
Over the more than 27 years that I've worked as a human potential coach, I've watched literally thousands of people struggle with being stuck in their lives. They get stuck in their careers, stuck in their relationships, stuck in their mindsets and belief systems. And we're trained that this is a bad thing, that somehow if you're doing everything right, your life will flow with effortlessness and ease. And then reality knocks on your door and you're faced with frustration, bitterness, anger, disappointment, and the unexpected. And we respond with the thought that we're stuck or we're doing something wrong. There's a beautiful plant that I love called the bougainvillea that grows in California and Mexico. It's a subtropical plant, so you can find it anywhere where it's warmer than here in Minneapolis. If you've ever grown bougainvillea, you'll know that to get the maximum amount of blooms, you have to let the plant dry up and experience deprivation. The drought conditions actually make the plant struggle and ultimately produce much more bountiful and beautiful flowers. We are like the bougainvillea. The challenges and struggles of life serve as our catalysts for growth and evolution. And if we're going to grow and evolve beyond what we think is possible, we have to not only learn to navigate or, dare I say, embrace challenge, we have to learn how to master ourselves and unify not only the life purpose of our personal self, but also the intention of our soul. You are here for a reason, a divine purpose. And to fulfill that purpose, you have to fully be in your human experience and also ultimately learn to transcend it and fulfill the destiny of your soul. Welcome to Quantum Conversations. My name is Karen Curry Parker, and I'm really looking forward to our quantum conversation today with author, speaker, and internationally recognized thought leader on the evolution of human values in business and society, Richard Barrett. He is the founder and chairman of the Barrett Value Center, a fellow of the World Business Academy, and the former values coordinator at the World Bank. As a creator of the internationally recognized cultural transformation tools, he's responsible for the support of more than 6,000 organizations on their transformation journeys. His organization has trained over 5,000 people in 94 countries. He's been a visiting lecturer at the Consulting and Coaching for Change Leadership course run by the University of Oxford Saïd Business School and HEC Paris. He's published many books on values, human potential, consciousness, and leadership, and he has a brand new book, A New Psychology of Human Well-Being, an exploration of the influence of ego-soul dynamics on mental and physical health. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you so much, Karen.
In your new book, you talk about how we can't just apply traditional psychology and essentially work on maximizing the mental and emotional well-being of a person if we don't also look at the soul of a person. That's a pretty interesting concept. I can't imagine how this has sort of landed with scientifically oriented people. So talk to me for a minute about this concept of the ego and the soul. And I also want you to throw in for me a little bit, why do we sometimes have resistance to this concept?
Well, Karen, if you were alive and well 60, 70, 80 years ago, the concept of the soul was well acknowledged in psychotherapeutic circles. Carl Jung, who is famous, Roberto Saggioli, who is a little less famous, were European psychotherapists who developed a body of work that helped people heal by recognizing not only did they have an ego, but they also had a soul. So the purpose of writing this book, A New Psychology of Human Well-Being, was to bring the soul back into psychology. So that raises the question, well, why did it leave in the first place? And it left because psychology over the last 50 or 60 years has become increasingly scientific. In other words, the scientific cosmology does not admit consciousness other than an epiphenomenon of the brain, and would not admit the soul into any of its research. So in order for psychologists to become more mainstream, they had to let go of the soul. Huge mistake, I believe, because I tell you, when I speak, and I often do speaking engagements, I always ask the audience to do one thing. I do a little exercise with them, and I say, please stand up if the answer to this question, if my statement is correct. I have an ego. And then most of the people stand up, and then I say, I am an ego. And not so many stand up. Then I say, I have a soul. And even when I speak to academic audiences, they all stand up when I say I have a soul. Then I say I am a soul, and they all stay standing. And I say to them, okay, I notice a little confusion here, because you're not sure whether you have a soul or you are a soul. And in that gap, in that confusion, I place this book, because this book basically says everybody is a soul. You don't have a soul. And once you realize that you are a soul, you can leave behind this ideas, the limited ideas of science, and recognize that what is truly important to you is the energy field in which you live and the feelings that you get and the emotions that you have. That is your key to accessing what I call the fourth dimension of reality, which is the world of the soul.
Beautiful. So it's fascinating, though, because the field of psychology, which I think to a certain degree has really become very medicalized in the last 50 years, has, as you said, has embraced the scientific model. I'm wondering how you feel in general about having a model about humans. Talk to me for just a minute about, when we think about human beings and the multiple archetypes of expressions of possibilities that humans have, how can we even systematize a process of helping a human being evolve?
Well, that, Karen, is the big question. And so I've been working on this for more than 20 years. And I discovered over 20 years ago that Maslow was on the right track, because he was looking at this hierarchy of needs. And what I realized was that actually his model wasn't quite complete, because he didn't have sufficient detail around self-actualization. So I created the model called the 7 levels of consciousness model, which applies to every human being and every human group structure. And every human being at the deepest level is on exactly the same journey. We may live in different cultures, we may have different beliefs, there seems to be a whole lot of diversity, but when you get down to it, we all grow and develop in 7 stages. The first 3 stages are all about establishing your ego so that you can live in this 3-dimensional material world and be successful. And the last 3 stages are all about shifting into soul consciousness so you can thrive and find a sense of fulfillment in your life. The 4th stage, which bridges the ego development with the soul actualization, is the stage exactly where you begin to blend the ego with the soul. You begin to let go of the belief structures that you formed in order to get your needs met when you were growing up, and you begin to recognize that that's not who you are. You are actually something different, and you find out truly through self-knowledge that you are a soul having this human experience. And at that level, we all share the same values. And so I built that model. I've used it to map the values of thousands of organizations, 27 nations, and literally millions of individuals. And your listeners can actually go online and check out their own values, because every value we have belongs to a level of consciousness. And I'll give you this website and people can just go online and check it out. Where are they? So it's www.valuescenter/PVA. That's values, plural, center spelled the English way, CENTRE, all one word, /P as in Peter, V as in Victor, and A as in Andrew, PVA. It stands for Personal Values Assessment. And within 2 minutes of doing a very short survey, you'll get a report back which actually shows you what levels of consciousness you're operating at and describes who you are in some detail.
Wow, that's fascinating. So it kind of leads me to the next question then, which is, when we talk about human potential and maximizing your potential and moving from just existing to thriving, going beyond self-actualization, as Maslow would say, what keeps us stuck? What keeps us from bridging into those levels that are more associated with thriving?
Well, there's one word answer to that, and the answer is fear. So the first 3 stages of psychological development all occur in the first 24 years of our lives. And when we get to around 24, we have a fully functioning brain or mind, because during the first 2 years of our lives, our reptilian mind brain is dominant and it's growing and developing. During the next 5 or 6 years, up to the age of 8, our limbic mind brain is growing and developing. And from age about 8 onwards to 24, our neocortex is growing and developing. That's our rational mind. So teenagers don't have a fully formed brain or mind, and that's why they do some stupid things. Even when people get beyond 24, they still do stupid things. And that's because they didn't master those lower levels of consciousness. And so it's at that stage where roughly from 24 onwards up to about 39 or 40, we go through this stage where I call it individuation, which was a very famous word which Carl Jung invented, and he spoke about it a lot, but it's basically letting go of the fears that we developed during those first 3 stages of development about getting our survival, safety, and security needs met. So everybody grows up with some fears. Some people grow up to be extremely delusional and, are psychotic because they did not experience care during the first 2 stages of development. They weren't loved and they didn't feel they may have been abandoned, and they developed beliefs that the world they live in is unsafe and that they are unloved. And then the next stage, from 8 to 24, we develop beliefs about not being good enough, the self-esteem beliefs. So basically, I think what we have to recognize that every family is dysfunctional to a certain extent, and all children grow up either just a little dysfunctional or a lot dysfunctional based on the beliefs they learned about getting their needs met during the first 24 years of your life. And then the rest of our life, those beliefs are pretty much hardwired because our brains were growing and developing. And so it's kind of hard to undo that. Now, the only way you can undo that is through some sort of psychotherapeutic intervention, or if the beliefs are not too deep, you can do it through some form of coaching.
So I'm digressing in my brain. I have 8 children, and they're all sort of in that individuation phase and deeply embracing their dysfunctionality at the moment with great delight. So now I have a little more hope. Thank you. But it's an interesting thing, though. I have to ask you, why is it that we are all dysfunctional?
Yeah. Well, this is to an extent.
Yes, to an extent.
Because, you see, we're all basically souls having this 3-dimensional material human experience. And why? Why are we doing that? Well, the answer to that question is so that we can, as souls, we can evolve and grow. Because in the fourth dimension of reality, there is only love and connectedness. And so at that level where our souls are normally, before they decide to come into our bodies, there is really no chance for them to grow and develop because there's no pain and there's no fear. And so like they're hanging out in this situation where they find it difficult to grow. And so they decide to incarnate, dumb down their intelligence and perception into three-dimensional material reality. And very quickly, the pain of being here, the pain of separation is so much or so great that they form an ego, which the ego is the buffer between the reality that our mind is creating and the soul, because the soul finds it too painful to be here. And so the ego grows and develops and is really the guardian of the soul. Now, if the ego has a really tough time during this period of up to 24 years, the beliefs it will learn are so deep and so fearful that they stay present the rest of our lives. So the individuating stage, 24 to 39, is all about releasing those fears so that you can now re-encounter the life force within you, which is the soul. And those stages beyond 39 and 40 are about, first of all, self-expression. The soul comes to fully express who it is. It comes to connect with other people so it can make a difference. And it comes to make a contribution, because at the soul level, there is only connectedness. There's only oneness. Let me just give you a little example. If you take a comb, that we use for combing our hair, and you cover up the top half of the comb so you only see the teeth, what you're actually seeing is the world as it appears in three-dimensional material reality. All you see is separation, separate teeth. Now, when you uncover the top half of the comb, you see the connection. And that's the fourth dimensional reality that we actually live inside, but we are unaware of because of the limits of perception of our material senses. So if we can get past the limits of our material senses, we can actually recognize that we live in this fantastically connected world, and that shows up in all sorts of ways, like synchronicity or the ability to see into the future, etc., etc. So yeah, we're all here because we're learning, basically, and we're all at different stages of learning. So I've spent my whole life learning. I'm now 72 years old and I'm still learning. But I could, as I said at the beginning of this book, I couldn't have written this book until this year because I was still going through the stages of development. And now I've been through them all. I can look back and say, well, okay, look, yeah, here are the different stages. This is what happens. This is your experience. So when I'm talking to a 30-year-old, I can say immediately, I know what you're going through. You're at the stage of life where you're looking for autonomy and freedom to be who you really are. Whereas if I'm talking to a teenager, I can simply say, what you're looking for right now is recognition and acceptance for who you really are, and so on. So each stage has its own needs. And eventually, when you've been through all of those needs and mastered them, you feel a sense of fulfillment, and you're able to make a difference in the world and live a life of meaning and passion.
Yeah, beautiful. So I'm curious, because in my practice, when I work with people, I tend to see people who are between the ages of 48 and 52. And that seems to be a huge cataclysmic point. What's going on there? Well,
yeah, you nailed it. Okay. By the way, there's another book I've written called Evolutionary Coaching, which goes into this in some detail. The book we're talking about today is even more detailed than evolutionary coaching, but it links the stages of development to, physical and mental distress. And so when you fail at a particular stage of development, it leads to mental difficulties, which eventually lead to physical difficulties. So I link the leading causes of death to the problems that we have at different stages of development. So now let's come back to your question. The individuating stage is between roughly 25 and 39. And that's where we find freedom and autonomy to be who we really are. Now, as we move into the self-actualizing phase, which is the place you're talking about, between 40 and 52, you're actually in the self-actualizing stage. And this means that now, if you haven't completed your freedom and autonomy, you'll still be looking for that. But what you're really doing is, this is the first stage of soul activation. And at this stage, what you're looking for is self-expression. Some people call it meaning, some people call it purpose, but actually that's the label the ego gives to it. The actual, what is actually happening as far as the soul is concerned, is it's looking to express itself fully through the physical body that it's sitting in. And what blocks it are the fears that the ego has. And so particularly the fears of survival. So many people suddenly find in their 40s that they're in love with a particular, or very passionate about a particular vocation. And it's different from the career that they started out on, and they've been quite successful, and now find it extremely difficult to give up that income in order to pursue what they're passionate about. And that was my case. In my mid-40s, I suddenly realized I was absolutely bored with my career as a transportation engineer. I was working in the World Bank. I'd gone as far as I could in that career. I was bored with transportation engineering. And I realized at that point that when I was 17, I kind of misheard my soul, because I thought my soul said transportation, but actually it said transformation. And so I realized then that I had to reorientate my life, which took about a few years before I could extract myself from the World Bank. But I invented a way of measuring consciousness by mapping values to this model. That's what happened at that stage in my life. And I've never looked back since. But my pals at the World Bank said, "You're absolutely crazy." They said, you're leaving this tax-free six-figure salary, which will turn into a pension in about 12 years' time, about the same amount, and you're going off to do something that you actually have no qualifications in and no track record in, and why are you being so stupid? And I said, well, I can't help it. I'm weird, and that's the way it is.
I love that. And I love that you had the courage to do that. That's quite beautiful, and I think quite special. So.
Well, the point is, if I hadn't, I would have been depressed the rest of my life.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what I see, certainly with a lot of my clients, that you settled at a certain point for being half speed for the rest of your days.
Yeah.
So I want to shift gears just a bit here, because we always talk on Quantum Conversations about how can we make the world a better place. You've done a lot of teaching around values, leadership, maximizing potential, and even, I'm guessing, the way values influence public policy and economy. Mm-hmm. I want to explore something for just a minute. We are collectively facing some huge challenges on a global level. We've got, I think, in essence, a major challenge with the concept of sustainability. It seems to me that we need a new human value system that incorporates the consciousness of sustainability and maybe even a new definition of what it means to be abundant in order for us to find innovative solutions facing humanity today.
Yeah.
What changes do you think we need to make, both personally and collectively, to shift values and create global policies that are sustainable and, if I'm really going to be risky here, abundant for all of us?
Okay, so first of all, the 7 levels model covers this, because once you get to the last 3 stages of development, the self-actualization, which is you begin to live in soul consciousness, then you move to what I call making a difference, or the connection level, because you can't make a difference unless you can connect. And then we move to the contribution level. And at those levels, each stage, you expand your sense of identity. So when you expand your sense of identity, you care for whatever it is you identify with. So, for example, when you were single, you pretty much cared for yourself and found freedom or autonomy. Then you got married and had kids, and then you cared for your spouse and your children. If you didn't, then you wouldn't be in that family very long. So you expand your sense of identity. When you expand your sense of identity, you care for those people who are now included in your identity. Then you expand your sense of identity to your organization and to your nation. And in the next stage beyond that is to expand your sense of identity to the world. Now, what is happening in the USA right now is USA was progressing towards that expansion of identity for the world, but many people were left behind. Donald Trump came along, resonated with these people who were basically focusing more on themselves and the nation. And so that sort of world awareness, that identity, larger identity, which some of your previous leaders had, particularly Obama and the fellow who never became a leader, who was defeated by George Bush, who's into sustainability. I can't remember his name right now. Al Gore. See, Al Gore's operating at the level of consciousness, level 6. So he has that larger sense of identity. So he cares for the world. So you ask me, what needs to happen? Well, we have to have an evolution of consciousness. That's the basic thing if we're going to live in a sustainable world. But I don't want to live in a sustainable world. I want to live in a thriving world beyond sustainability. So I really find I was at the World Bank in 1992, when they created the first vice presidency for environmentally sustainable development, and I became the assistant to that vice president. So I've been in this sustainability world for a long time. And so here's another comment. First of all, nations are the crucibles of consciousness. So we have to expand the sense of identity or the level of consciousness in each nation in order for us to get there to this place where sustainability is possible and move beyond that. Now, I want to take issue, a slight issue with you on the word abundance, because frankly, I don't need to live in an abundant world. I need to live in a world of enough. I don't need abundance in my life. I just need enough. And when you live in soul consciousness, that's exactly what happens. Your soul organizes your life so you have enough of what you need to be able to live the life of your soul. So I say to people, I have no needs. Why? Because my soul anticipates my needs before I know I have them, because I identified with my soul, and my soul now, actually, I've become the servant of my soul. There is no I left. I just simply am my soul, and my soul is able to operate at the higher dimension of existence, creating synchronistic experiences, which I pay attention to, because these are just messages from my soul about what I need to do. I'm told what books to write. I'm told what to put in these books. And unfortunately, my soul likes to communicate with me around 4 a.m. in the morning, which means I have to get up at 5 o'clock and write every day.
I understand. Mine does that in the shower. I've gotten to where I keep waterproof crayons in the shower because, so. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Richard. I am actually very inspired by what you've said, particularly the abundant piece, which is exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. Richard Barrett's new book, A New Psychology of Human Well-Being, can be found on Amazon and other online booksellers. It's an amazing book, by the way. Read it for yourself, or if you're in any profession that is involved with coaching or guiding or serving others, I strongly recommend it as a resource for you to discover new and empowered ways to help your clients. You can also connect with Richard on his website, which is www.richardbarrett, and Barrett is BARRETT.net. So www.richardbarrett.net. This is Karen Curry Parker. Thank you for joining us with Quantum Conversations. You have an ego, but you're not an ego. You have a soul, and you are a soul. Who you are goes beyond who you've been taught that you are. Who you are goes beyond what modern psychological research says that you are. Quantum physics shows us that your soul and the consciousness of your soul is the mediator between the quantum field of possibility and the manifested world, the unifier between heaven and earth. If you don't unify the intention and purpose of your soul with the intention and purpose of your personal self, you're going to feel stuck. To maximize the possibilities of your life, you have to unify both of these aspects of who you really are so that you can create your own heaven on earth. The truth is, it might not always be easy. As Richard Barrett pointed out, fear and pain are the catalysts for growth. And when we understand this, we can embrace the beauty of the entire human experience. We can be fully present to all that our life is bringing us without resistance and self-recrimination. The truth is, sometimes your life is going to hurt, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Your pain represents an opportunity to really grow and discover what else is possible. You are a soul, you have a soul, and that soul is the directing force of your life. It promises you that you will have everything you need. You will be sufficient when you follow it. When you embrace and recognize the infinite beauty and wisdom of your soul, you will see that conversing with your soul at 4 a.m. in the morning or in the shower is the most delicious and glorious conversation you can have, and that serving your soul's intention is the greatest gift you give not only to yourself, but to the world. If you'd like to learn more about your soul's intentions and purpose and the challenges you need to master to unify your life purpose and your soul purpose, please visit our Quantum Conversation Facebook page where you can get your free human design chart and report. Your human design shows you who you really are so that you can do what you came here to do and share the gifts that your soul brings to the world. This is Karen Curry Parker thanking you for joining us for Quantum Conversations.
Thanks for listening to Quantum Conversations with Karen Curry Parker. For more information, visit joyfulmission.com.